One of the challenges of analyzing an inventory scenario is that you have to be able to make the diagnosis between when something is an EOQ style scenario and when it's an EPQ style scenario. The hotel dessert making scenario here is a good example of needing to make that call. Remember that anytime you're told how fast something is made, it's an EPQ scenario. Let's look. A large hotel serves banquets and several restaurants from a central kitchen in which labor is shifted among various stations and jobs. Dessert consumption is virtually constant and known to be 30,000 desserts a year. That's a lot of desserts. That's also what we know as capital D, annual demand for something, 30,000. Okay, got it. Desserts can be produced at a rate of 125 a day. P equals 125. Lowercase p is daily demand when that, or excuse me, daily production rate. Lowercase p is the daily production rate. When that was volunteered, which it is early on in this scenario, that tells us we are working with the EPQ formulas. That's what's appropriate. Okay, but we're not even halfway through the scenario. There's a lot more information here. What else? Okay, the hotel is open 365 days a year. That's nice. It costs $4 to set up the dessert preparation station regardless of how many desserts are prepared. So we know what that is. That is capital S, the fixed cost of replenishment. Okay, it's $4. And what else? And it costs, each dessert costs 40 cents. Okay, each dessert costs 40 cents. That's the unit cost. The appropriate annual holding cost of a dessert is estimated to be 300% the cost of the dessert due to the risk of spoilage. That is the information that we need for capital H. H is the cost of holding one unit in inventory for 1 year. And between these two things, we were just told that, right? The dessert costs 40 cents and the cost of holding it annually, like you would hold a dessert for 1 year, but nonetheless is 300% or 3 times that. So we better do that arithmetic because we're going to need it later. 40%, that's the unit cost, or 40 cents, that's the unit cost, times 3 for 300% is $1.20. Oh, okay, so the cost of holding 1 unit in inventory for 1 year is $1.20. Not that we would hold a dessert in inventory for a year, but we're going to need that for the formulas. Okay, now what else? Unfortunately, the refrigerated pantry that the kitchen uses to store desserts only stores a maximum of 300 desserts, so the kitchen always makes a batch of 300 desserts every time it needs new desserts. Interesting. Here is an example of a scenario in which we're thinking, okay, I have the D, I have the S, I have the H, I'm going to need to find Q, you know, the amount that should be ordered. That was already decided. That's what that last sentence means. Q equals 300. They already decided that. They make these 300 at a time. Okay, now, if they've already decided that, what's the question? How much does the Hotel Central kitchen pay in total annual holding and ordering costs on dessert? How often does it produce desserts under its current policy? They have already decided. We just need to figure out the cost. This is an EPQ scenario. That means that the total relevant cost is D divided by Q plus S times S plus Q times P minus lowercase d divided by 2p divided by, or excuse me, multiplied times h. Okay. Then I just need to fill in the formula. I need to fill in the formula. I had found D, correct? D is 30,000 a year. The hotel has already decided they're making these 300 at a time. S is 4. The hotel has already decided they're making these 300 at a time, so that's Q. Q times 125 minus, whoops, I am missing something, I thought I had everything that I need, but I am missing one parameter to calculate the total annual holding and ordering cost on desserts. I am missing lowercase d, daily demand. I'm missing it, but I have everything that I need to figure out what it should be. I just hadn't done that up to this point, because let's think about this. Some room for scratch work up here. I need lowercase d. I know that the hotel needs 30,000 of these annually, right? And I know that it's open 365 days out of the year. That means that if I take the 365 and I divide it into the 30,000, that'll get me daily demand. If they need 30,000 annually divided by the number of days, then that would be what they need daily, or what the daily demand is. Okay, so I did that, and it's a little messy. It's like 82.2 some odd. Oh, okay. So customers are eating desserts at a rate of 82.2 a day, apparently, perfectly level. All right, anyway, now I have what I need to finish with this formula, 82.2. That's what goes here, divided by 2 times 125, right? 2p times, right, h. H is 1.2, or $1.20. Okay, so I put those numbers in my calculator. This half I get is 400. That's the annual ordering costs. This half right here is the annual holding costs. I get 61.63, meaning that the total combined ordering and holding cost of their policy is $461 and like about 63 cents. Oh, all right. Well, that answers that first question. And there's a hint in here that that is not the lowest cost policy, because the lowest cost policy, the EPQ, these two numbers right here should basically balance. And notice how they're way out of balance. We're paying way more for the first half is the ordering cost than for the holding cost. All right, but they didn't ask us. They just asked us to calculate the total cost of their policy. There was a little tag on question here. How often does it produce desserts under its current policy? You could answer that question with this right here. That part of the formula, D divided by Q, is the frequency of ordering. Just think about it. They have a demand of 30,000 a year that they are meeting by making these 300 at a time. Do that division all by itself reveals that they are producing 100 times a year, basically, the frequency of ordering. Oh, okay, so there, that's taken care of too, although we actually had done that within the first formula. What else do they want to know? What is the order size or run size that would minimize the total annual ordering and holding costs for desserts, and how much savings could be achieved by this order size? Okay, so finally, this is looking more familiar like an EPQ formula. If you want to minimize those costs that have been discussed, you say, all right, well, the square root of 2 times d times s divided by h, except we remember that this is an EPQ scenario, so the formula goes on, times the square root of p over p minus d. Now, all I need to do is fill this out. Okay, so that's the square root of what? 2 times 30,000 times 4, right? That, divided by 1.2, that's all under a square root, times under another square root, 125 over 125 minus the 82.2 some odd that I calculated. Okay, so I get that it's kind of messy, you know, like 764.273333, which this doesn't make any recommendation in terms of a batch of desserts. So I am pretty comfortable rounding that to a recommendation of 764 desserts. Okay, now what's that supposed to mean? It means instead of making them 300 at a time, why don't we make them 764 at a time? Why? Because that will minimize those annual ordering and holding costs. Oh, okay, now that right there only answers that first question, because then it asks, speaking of minimizing those costs, well, fine, if you were to do this, how much savings would there be? All right, we know what it costs because we had to answer the first question. We know what it costs when they make them 300 at a time. We now need to take this number and do the same computations, the total cost formula. All right. What is the total cost of making them 764 at a time? Well, D is still 30,000. Divided by 764 would reveal the number of times they produce desserts, but that would still be multiplied times 4, that's the S, plus Q is 764 times, in the total cost formula, it's P minus D here, so that's the 125 minus the 82.2, divided by 2 times 125, or 2P, right? I get that this part works out to be like 157.07 and this part 156.9. Oh, they come out, it's just the rounding here is the only reason they're different. They come out virtually the same and they sum up to basically $314. Depending on how you round it, I get like you can tag on 3 cents, but it's $314 for the most part. Now, whoa, that's not the savings. That's the total cost if you make the desserts 764 at a time. The savings would be the difference between this and what we found previously. Let's see, savings. Well, we found out previously that I get like $461.63. That's the Q equals 300, right? And if you were to change your policy and start making them 764 at a time, that would only cost $314.03, right? That's the Q equals 764. Revealing a savings of about $147.60. That's the savings. Considering what they're doing right now, that's the savings of using the EPQ. Now, it said in the scenario that the reason that they made them 300 at a time had to do with the size of their walk-in refrigerator. Their walk-in refrigerator could hold 300 desserts at most. Now notice the last question. It says, by how much would the central kitchen have to expand the capacity of the refrigerated pantry to store desserts to implement this lowest cost policy, meaning to implement that policy right there. Make them 764 at a time. Make them in batches of 764 at a time. Right now, the refrigerated pantry only can hold 300 at a time. You're tempted to say 764 minus 300, whatever that difference is, 464. I mean, they're going to have to expand the pantry, right? Oh, right, and if you have the first edition of Simpson and Hancock, oops, naughty, naughty. It actually says that in the back. The truth is, good for you if you were suspicious. They don't have to expand the pantry. You say, what? They're going to be making these 764 at a time and this pantry holds 300. Why would they not have to expand the pantry? Because the necessary size of the pantry is a function of maximum inventory. They make these 764 at a time, but remember, customers are eating them at a rate of 82 a day. Customers are eating them, they make them 125 a day and customers are eating them at a rate of 82 a day. Customers are eating them almost as fast as they're making them. So even though they make them 764 at a time, it's not likely that they'll ever actually have 764 that need refrigerated. We need to find the maximum inventory to check the pantry size. Maximum inventory for the EPQ is Q times P minus D divided by simply P. So in this case, take the 764, multiply it times, 125 is how fast they're making it, minus 82 2.2 basically is how fast it's being eaten every day, divided by 125. I get like, 261.59, basically 262, like around 262 desserts. 261 to 262 desserts is what they're kind of like standby stock of desserts. It's the most that it would max out at. Oh, so they're making them in batches of 764, but the most they'd ever accumulate before this, they stop making desserts and the stock starts going back down again, would only be about 262, which will easily fit into their existing refrigerated pantry.